The Roman Empire was one of the largest military and economic powers of the ancient world. At their height, they controlled almost all of Europe and the Mediterranean. Yet in the 5th century CE, the entire western half of the empire collapsed. How did this happen to such a powerful nation? Over the centuries, historians have attributed many things to the fall of the empire, including answers as far-reaching as childishness, Bolshevization, impotence, public baths, mystery religions, lack of seriousness, bastardization, and even gout. No single factor, however, can be pointed to as the one force that felled the empire. From political, with increasingly corrupt and clashing leaders, social, with the decrease in church and state unification, economic, with its destructive inflation, military, and environmental, with conflict due to geographical hindrances. A countless number of problems took effect over hundreds of years and eventually caused the great empire to fall.
Starting off, a major factor contributing to the fall of the western half of the Roman Empire was the lack of social stability compared to the East. One of the things that was especially evident was that Latin culture had not yet unified the people of the West the way Greek culture had unified the people of the East. What this means is that the citizens of the eastern half found the ideas and beliefs associated with the Greek culture to be acceptable, while the citizens of the western half found the beliefs of the Latin culture to be abnormal or weird. Another reason for which the western half of the Roman Empire fell was due to the huge group of Roman citizens that were drawn away from the government and towards Christianity. It led to a great change in lifestyle for many, but it had its benefits referred to as a new commonwealth of men for men by Mamigliano. According to Nagel, Christianity produced a new style of life, created new loyalties, and gave people new ambitions and new satisfactions. The final major social reason that the western half of the Roman Empire fell was due to network failure. The empire was set up as a collection of local elites who were in charge of certain areas, which depended on the cooperation of the elites. As the population steadily declined, the elites were expected to do more work for less money. Due to this, a lot of the elites left the network and lost the cooperation of other elites, leaving the locals to look to the general people for help.
Another factor that contributed to the fall of Rome were the economic problems that developed. Changing conditions were creating serious financial issues for the whole empire. These issues centered on the problem of money shortage. One thing that led to a money shortage was the cost of lots of wars. Under the reign of Diocletian and Constantine, the army grew to twice its size, and the civil bureaucracy grew as well. Because of this, the imperial budget grew greatly in order to pay the salaries of the soldiers and officials, and the government struggled to find the funds for this. Another thing that created economic issues was a drop in taxpayers. One reason for this drop was a decrease in population, resulting from plague and civil war. Taxpayers were also lost to the growing population of tenant farming. The threat of being persecuted by army troops and the desire to avoid taxes drove many farmers to give ownership of their land to landlords. These landlords had imperial favor, which made them exempt from taxes. When other farmers signed their land over to the landlords, the government could no longer collect taxes from them as well. The decrease in available money drove the government to take actions that were ultimately catastrophic for the empire. They attempted to balance out the loss of their income by raising taxes. This was disastrous because it drove even more people to turn to tenant farming, which further cut off tax income. It also drove some farmers who could not pay their taxes to abandon their lands. Without enough money, the government also began to pay its officials with different things, such as land, which were, of course, exempt from taxes. These officials were able to accumulate more and more property, which again led to those powerful landlords with tenant farming. Another way that the government attempted to get money was by debasing coins. Less precious metal was put in each, and production jumped. This led to the problem of inflation. Prices were raised by nearly 700%. Unfortunately, the salary of some did not change to reflect inflation, driving poor farmers to tenant farming and soldiers to extort people. With power now mostly with the landlords, central authority was weakened. Without the funds, an army could not be held together, and as a result, there was no longer sufficient defense against invasions. Much of the land was desolate, and things like trade were much harder because the value of money was not set. All these economic problems ultimately contributed to the fall of the Roman Empire.
The fall of the Western Roman Empire was also brought on partially due to its unfavorable geography. Its physical features left it far more open to invasion than the eastern half of the empire. If an invading force from Asia wanted to take over the Western Roman Empire, the only major difficult feature to cross would be the Ural Mountains. Europe is essentially a flat, open plain once these have been crossed. Meanwhile, on the northern and western borders, the empire is tasked with defending against barbarians or Germanic tribesmen along both the Rhine and Danube rivers. The Eastern Roman Empire, on the other hand, has far more defensible borders. They are protected by both the Black Sea and the Caucasus Mountains on the east, while in the west they are only tasked with defending against the lower Danube River. Additionally, the East had many well-developed cities that had been established for thousands of years. The Western Roman Empire had only recently been urbanized, and still not to the extent that the East had. As a result, the East could defend itself with strongholds such as Istanbul, while the West had no such places. Finally, Eastern Rome's higher population gave it a massive advantage over the West. Asia Minor, which is what Turkey was called then, was especially densely populated. This allowed for a great deal of recruiting for the military, while the West, with its small and sparse population, often relied on the recruitment of Germanic tribesmen.
When Diocletian split Rome, the new government system with 2 emperors for each seemed to be stable for some time. However, political changes arose just as economic and social ones did. The East was considerably more privileged than the West, and the unbalanced scale led to conflict between the 2 provinces. Occasionally, a Western leader would run to the East asking for assistance, but Eastern leaders figured, why should we help? We have it great here, and they're their own state now. Their issues are not ours. Within each province, there were separate leaders for civil and military matters, instead of one in charge of both. As time went on, the goals and values of these leaders clashed more and more, until policies for each division were very different, which led to more internal conflict. When Diocletian doubled the size of the army, the military needed a lot more money, but didn't get great responses when asking the government for it. By that point, the government had reverted back to old ways. Elites and officials finding ways to be on top, stay on top. What was once Augustus's reform on making bureaucracy better had taken off too far. Government bureaucrats were corrupt, organizing and maintaining a complex system where the money and power would end up in their hands. As Rome's ending era progressed, the population decreased and structure became weaker in many aspects. The constant flow of Germanic tribesmen into Rome eventually had no choice but to let them in and let them take power. Rome's army saw a plethora of barbarian leaders, as did their government. These undiplomatic, power-hungry tribesmen didn't exactly have the health of Rome as their top priority in mind, but needless to say, Rome needed them to maintain order.
The Roman Empire was vast and complex, and its end was no different. The list of reasons why it fell is too extensive to ever know completely. However, these problems were not particular to Rome. Many of the problems that brought Rome to its knees are common still today, and also affected other empires. For example, a growing popularity of the periphery weakened the central authority in the Han Empire, similar to the situation with the landlords in Rome. Also, similar economic issues to those experienced by the Roman government contributed to the fall of the Persian Empire as well. Basically, many empires went through many of the same issues. They were weakened from a lot of the same challenges. After all, they were successful at some point, at least for some of the same reasons, and similar actions can sometimes lead to similar consequences. Whether Rome fell because of problems pertaining to social structure, the environment, economics, politics, or other areas entirely, it was undeniably failing for a long time. No matter how great Rome was, ultimately its problems were greater, and in the end Rome could no longer be considered the wondrous empire it was before.